Welcome back to Cheater's True Stories, where we unravel the messy, heart-pounding moments that redefine lives. Tonight, we're diving into the story of Claire, a woman who thought she knew her limits until one forbidden spark set her world on fire. This tale of longing, betrayal, and dangerous choices will grip you until the very last word. So, grab a drink, settle in, and let's walk this razor's edge. Claire had always been the steady one. At 40, she was the friend who hosted perfect dinner parties, the wife who remembered to book dentist appointments, the woman who smiled even when her heart felt like it was shrinking. Her marriage to David wasn't crumbling, it was just still, like a pond untouched by wind. They'd been together 15 years, long enough for love to soften into habit. But habits can make you invisible, and Claire hadn't realized how much she'd faded until the day she saw him again. It was a chilly November evening when Claire stopped by her friend Sarah's house to return a cookbook. Sarah's son, Ethan, answered the door. Claire remembered him as a gangly 17-year-old, all elbows and video games, forever dodging his mom's lectures. But this Ethan was 25 now, taller, his frame filled out with quiet strength. His hazel eyes met hers with a slow, deliberate weight that made her throat tighten. "Claire," he said, his voice a low hum that vibrated in the air. "Been a while." She clutched the cookbook, her smile automatic but shaky. "You're not a kid anymore." He grinned, leaning against the doorframe, his dark sweater pulling tight across his chest. "Guess I grew up." Sarah was out, but Ethan invited Claire in for tea. Every instinct screamed to leave. She was married, this was Sarah's son. But something in the way he held her gaze, like he saw past her polished exterior, made her step inside. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke, warm and too intimate. They stood by the counter, sipping tea that scalded her tongue, the silence thick with something unspoken. Ethan's fingers brushed hers when he took her cup to refill it, and the contact sent a jolt through her, sharp and reckless. "You look different," he said, his eyes tracing the line of her jaw, the soft curve of her scarf against her neck. "Like you're carrying something new." Claire laughed, too quick. "Just the same old me." "No," he said, stepping closer, close enough for her to catch the faint spice of his cologne. "You're more than that, always have been." Her pulse hammered, a warning she ignored. She mumbled an excuse about dinner plans and fled, leaving the cookbook behind. In her car, her hands trembled on the steering wheel. It was nothing, she told herself, just a young man testing his charm. But that night, as David snored beside her, his arm heavy across her waist, Claire lay awake, Ethan's voice looping in her mind. It wasn't just his words. It was the way they'd made her feel seen, like a woman she'd buried long ago was stirring awake. The next week was a blur of routine. Laundry, meetings, David's distracted kisses as he left for work. But Ethan lingered in the quiet moments, a shadow she couldn't shake. She avoided Sarah's house, dodging lunch invites with vague texts about being busy. It worked until a Thursday at the community center, where Claire ran a book drive. She was sorting donations when she felt a prickle on her neck, like someone was watching. Ethan stood by the entrance, a leather jacket slung over one shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Didn't know you were into this," he said, walking over, his boots echoing on the tile. "It's just volunteering," Claire said, stacking books to keep her hands busy. He handed her a folded note, his fingers grazing hers with purpose. "Read it later," he said, his voice soft but firm. Then he was gone, leaving only the scent of leather and cedar in his wake. Alone in her car, Claire unfolded the paper. His handwriting was bold, almost careless. "If I asked you to meet me, no strings, just coffee, would you say yes?" Saturday, 3 p.m., Willow Cafe. Her heart stuttered. She should have burned the note, laughed it off. But instead, she tucked it into her purse, its weight pulling at her all day. That night, as David rambled about a work project, Claire nodded absently, her mind on a cafe table and a man who shouldn't matter. She told herself she wouldn't go. She told herself she was stronger than this. But on Saturday, she stood before her mirror, choosing a navy dress that hugged her hips, earrings that shimmered when she turned her head. At the Willow Cafe, Ethan waited in a corner booth, his dark shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a coffee steaming in front of him. He smiled when she approached, not smug but relieved, like he'd bet on her and won. "You came," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "I shouldn't have," Claire admitted, sliding into the seat. They talked about nothing important, the weather, a new mural downtown, but every word felt like a step toward something dangerous. His knee brushed hers under the table, and she didn't move away. When he leaned forward, his voice dropped. "You didn't answer my question," Claire's breath caught. "What?" "If I asked for more than coffee," he said, his eyes holding hers, "would you say yes?" She gripped her mug, the heat grounding her. "I married Ethan." "I know," he said, unflinching, "but you're here." The truth of it stung. She stood, fumbling for her coat, but his hand caught her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her. "Claire," he said, softer now, "I'm not asking you to ruin your life. Just don't pretend you didn't feel it too." She pulled away, her heart racing, and left without looking back. But his words followed her home, burrowing deep. That moment broke something in Claire. She couldn't unfeel it. The spark, the pull, the way Ethan saw her not as David's wife or Sarah's friend, but as a woman burning with unmet desires. She threw herself into distraction, baking, yoga, long walks, but every step carried her closer to a line she swore she wouldn't cross. 2 weeks later, Sarah invited Claire for dinner. She almost declined, but guilt pushed her to go. Ethan was there, lounging in the living room, a beer in hand. His eyes found hers the moment she walked in, and the air shifted, heavy with secrets. Dinner was torture. Sarah's chatter about renovations, David's polite nods, Ethan's silence like a pulse in the room. Every time Claire glanced up, he was watching, his gaze stripping her bare. After dessert, she excused herself to the bathroom, needing air. When she stepped into the hallway, Ethan was there, too close, his shadow swallowing the light. "You're avoiding me," he said, not accusing, just stating. "I have to," Claire whispered, her back against the wall. "Do you?" He stepped closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "Or are you just scared of what you want?" She should have pushed him away. She should have run. Instead, she tilted her head, and when his lips met hers, it was like striking a match. The kiss was hungry, urgent, her hands fisting in his shirt, his fingers digging into her waist. Footsteps from the dining room snapped them apart, Claire's heart slamming against her ribs. She slipped back to the table, her face flushed, praying no one noticed. That night, David reached for her in bed, his touch familiar but distant. Claire let him, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying Ethan's mouth, his hands, the way he'd tasted of beer and rebellion. When David fell asleep, she stared at the ceiling, her body still humming with a need she couldn't name. The kiss was a door Claire couldn't close. She told herself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse, but Ethan's next note, slipped into her coat pocket at a book drive, proved her wrong. "Meet me. Friday, 8 p.m., the Old Mill Road. I can't stop thinking about you." She burned the note, but the words stayed. On Friday, she lied to David about a late meeting and drove to the Mill Road, where Ethan waited by his car, the moonlight carving shadows across his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but his eyes begged her to stay. "Then why did you ask me?" Claire shot back, stepping closer. He didn't answer, just kissed her again, harder this time, his hands sliding under her jacket, her body arching into his. They stumbled into his car, the windows fogging as their breaths mingled, clothes half torn in a frenzy of want. It wasn't just desire. It was Claire reclaiming something she'd lost, something David's gentle routines could never touch. When it was over, they sat in silence, her head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing her wrist. "This can't happen again," she said, her voice breaking. Ethan nodded, but his eyes said he knew better. For weeks, they danced on the edge, stolen kisses in empty parking lots, whispered calls when David was at work, a weekend at a motel an hour away where Claire felt more alive than she had in years. Each time she swore it was the last, but Ethan's pull was relentless, a tide she couldn't fight. He wasn't just a fling, he was a mirror, showing her the woman she'd forgotten, bold, hungry, unafraid. But secrets have a way of fraying. Sarah called one morning, her voice tight. "Claire, have you seen Ethan lately? He's different, distant." Claire's stomach dropped. "No," she lied, her throat dry. "Why?" "Just a feeling," Sarah said, but the pause that followed felt like an accusation. That night, Ethan texted, "Park, 9 p.m., we need to talk." Claire went, her heart in her throat. He stood by the pond, hands in his pockets, his face drawn. "I'm leaving," he said. "Got a job in Portland. Next week." The words hit like a slap. "Why didn't you tell me? Didn't want to hurt you." He stepped closer, his voice low. "But I can't stay, Claire, not like this." She wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but instead she kissed him, desperate, as if she could anchor him to her. When they pulled apart, he pressed a note into her hand. "One last time," he said. "Tomorrow, the cabin on Pine Lane. If you don't come, I'll understand." The next day, Claire moved through her house like a stranger. She cooked breakfast, smiled at David's jokes, folded towels. But by noon, she was packing a bag, her hands shaking as she chose a black dress she hadn't worn in years, red lipstick she saved for special nights. She told David she was visiting her sister and drove to the cabin, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. Ethan opened the door, and for a moment they just stared, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Then he pulled her inside and the world fell away. They didn't rush. Every touch was deliberate, every kiss a goodbye. They made love on a threadbare rug by the fireplace, her nails digging into his back, his whispers burning against her skin. It wasn't just passion. It was Claire staking claim to herself, to the woman she'd buried under years of duty. After they lay tangled in silence, the fires glowed dancing across their skin. "I love you," Ethan said, so quiet she almost missed it. Claire's chest ached. "Don't say that." "Why not?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "It's true." She didn't answer, just kissed him one last time, memorizing the shape of his mouth. When she left, the sky was heavy with stars and she didn't look back. Ethan was gone by Monday. Portland, a new life, a clean break. Claire slipped back into her routine, but it felt like moving through someone else's story. David noticed her quietness, asked if she was okay. She smiled, said she was just tired. But every morning, as she chose her clothes with care, silk instead of cotton, heels instead of flats, she felt Ethan's echo, not in guilt but in courage. Sarah called a month later, her voice warm but probing. "Ethan's doing well," she said. "He mentioned you once, said you were kind." Claire's heart stuttered, but she kept her tone light. "I'm glad he's happy." At night, she stood before her mirror, tracing the lines of her body with new eyes. David reached for her sometimes, and she let him, but her touch was different now, deliberate, chosen. He called her beautiful, and she believed him, not because he said it, but because she'd seen herself through Ethan's eyes. Some secrets don't break you, they rebuild you, piece by defiant piece. And that's Claire's story, a woman who danced with fire and found herself in the ashes. Would you have crossed that line? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more raw, gripping tales every week on Cheaters' True Stories. Until next time, stay honest, or at least know why you're not.